Okay, who knows what MSTIP stands for? If somebody can guess it correctly, I'll give you back your admission fee. Tony.
Now you can put me on the spot.
That's right.
The major streets transportation improvement. I don't know, program. Thank you.
Yes, all right, good job, yeah. So Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program. So I just wanted to give you a quick run through, just some background on this program. It's, as I was putting this together, I just realized we've been doing this for 30 years this year, so that's kind of a big deal. And so this is just a quick snapshot for context, sort of how MSTIP fits into the county's broader transportation funding strategy. We don't put all of our eggs in any one basket, and we can't do that just because of the way this works. But MSTIP really is a unique program, and you can see it's the biggest slice of the pie in the county here. And I just want to make a quick comment that the TDT portion, because I know we hear a lot of concerns that the TDT is too much, and those are potentially valid, concerns. But when you look at the funding here, TDT looks quite small. And I want to clarify that that's because we're looking at just the county, the unincorporated Washington County TDT funds relative to the overall county transportation budget. When we talk about MSTIP, it's truly a county-wide program. So it's all county funding, but it does get utilized both within the unincorporated areas of the county as well as within the cities. So it does make TDT look maybe a little smaller here than it reflects in terms of how we actually do transportation funding in the unincorporated areas. But today we're really going to be focusing in on MSTIP. And I guess I can't overemphasize the importance of this program. We've been doing this, like I said, for 30 years. It's been a pay-as-you-go program. Its primary purpose is improving our existing roadways so that two-lane rural road that's now got subdivisions on both sides of it, or has for 20 years, needs to be upgraded to a modern 3-lane or a 5-lane roadway with bike lanes and sidewalks. So that's really been the historical purpose of the MSTIP program. It's been incredibly successful. So countywide property taxes, that's the funding source for MSTIP. It has traditionally been a pay-as-you-go approach. We'll talk about a slightly different take that we've embarked on here recently. So we've funded more than 150 projects, almost $1 billion over the last 30 years. And again, this is a unique program. We're the only county in Oregon that has something like this. And so that's $1 billion of local funding that we've reinvested back into our roadway system here. And there's no other county in Oregon that can say that. And I can't overemphasize the importance of that. I mean, our businesses and our residents truly rely on that road network every day. And it's been a really, really huge deal that has really helped us, I think, in terms of our economic development and really becoming a powerhouse in the state of Oregon. So MSTIP, we have gotten into a 5-year funding cycle over the last couple of cycles, and I'll give you a little history on that. But every 5 years, essentially, we take a slate of projects to the Board of Commissioners and ask them to bless both an overall funding program and then some specific projects that will be funded in that upcoming 5-year period. And then I'll touch on, as Steve said, the bonding cost sharing program. So that is a new approach that we've taken. It will not be pay-as-you-go. We are going to be bonding some money to help jumpstart improvements in some of the high growth areas that Steve mentioned. So very quickly, just a quick timeline. So MSTIP started off as a series of serial levies. So it was initially in '86, a 3-year levy. In '89, we did a 6-year levy. In '95, we did another 6-year levy or so. But during MSTIP 3, the 1995 bond measure, Measure 50, happened. And if you all remember that, that basically created caps on property tax increases. And at that point, the levy rate that was in effect at the time was essentially cut and then capped, and it became a part of the county's base property tax rate. So that was an unintentional thing, but it has been a huge benefit to all of us, again, our businesses and our residents, because it now created a permanent funding stream, essentially, of MSTIP funds as part of the county's base property taxes. And since that time, we've just sort of stuck with MSTIP 3, and we've just been adding little letters at the end of them. So we had a MSTIP 3B, 3C, 3D is our current funding cycle, and then the board is approving MSTIP 3E Tuesday. So the MSTIP 3D, that's our current funding cycle. So it was $175 million over a 5-year period. Out of that $175 million, we have $160 million that's been earmarked for 19 specific road projects. When we do the road projects, again, they are multimodal, so that means that we're improving them for vehicular travel, adding lanes in many cases, turn lanes, but we're also adding bike facilities and sidewalks in many cases where none existed before. So roads that didn't even have a shoulder suddenly now have a bike lane. So it really does benefit all of our road users. In that, we had about $9.5 million for rural bridge replacements, $5 million for an opportunity fund, and I'll just mention that briefly. That's a pot of money that our board directed us to set aside, and what we use it for is the county and then other agencies within the county can come and request funds, and they use that opportunity fund as essentially a local match to help secure either state or federal or some other external funding to construct projects that probably couldn't otherwise get constructed just under the MSTIP program. It's been incredibly successful. We've leveraged about $7 of external funding for every dollar of opportunity fund that we've invested locally. So it's been huge. A couple of key projects, Tualatin River Greenway Trail just recently opened a huge segment, and there was a chunk of MSTIP opportunity fund monies in there. And then we secured, in cooperation with ODOT Region 1, we secured a $10 million federal grant using some MSTIP funds as our local match as well. So big returns on investment. And then lastly, $500,000 for ITS. ITS is Intelligent Transportation Systems, so those are things like traffic cameras, adaptive traffic signal systems. And what that does is helps us to essentially maximize the volumes that we can move through on our existing roadway system. So without adding an extra lane, can we work with signal timing and other things, priorities for bus, things like that, to try to help keep traffic moving as best we can. That's been another good investment. And again, that $10 million grant that I mentioned from ODOT, a large part of that funding is going into ITS enhancements on some of our major roadways, Murray, Shoals Ferry, 185th, Cornell, I'm sure I'm missing some. And then ODOT will be doing some work on Highway 26 and on Highway 84, extending their real-time system like you've seen on Highway 217 that has actually helped keep traffic flowing as well. So in MSTIP 3D, that's our current funding cycle. Most of the projects that were approved in that cycle back in 2012, those are mostly in design or construction at this point. And then Gary Stockhoff's our county engineer. He's going to give a couple of project updates specifically. So that's just a map of the MSTIP 3D projects. You'll see commissioner districts on here. I forgot to mention that one of the fundamental tenets of how we distribute the funding, because it is county-wide property taxes, we try to make sure that we're distributing the funds equally in various parts of the county. The methodology we've adopted for doing that is by commissioner district. So we have 4 commissioners. So each commissioner receives an approximately equal share of the funding, each district I should say. So you can see it does really help us distribute that funding around the county. So I mentioned MSTIP 3E. The board will be adopting the MSTIP 3E program on Tuesday. Very similar to the 3D program. It's $175 million over the 5-year period, $160 million. This time we have 23 projects that will either be designed or built as a result of this. We've changed around the funding a little bit. We've got $7.5 million in the Opportunity Fund this time, so that's a 50% increase over the 3D program. But again, with the success that we've seen there in leveraging those other funds, the board was really behind upping our game there. So we reduced rural bridges a little bit, and then we have still $500,000 for ITS enhancements. So that's a map just showing the 3E projects. So the bonding cost sharing program. So this is something that the board adopted in 2015. This is our first deviation from the pay-as-you-go program, essentially. So we will be bonding funds to help front load some improvements that we think are pretty critical to helping keep traffic moving adjacent to some of the major high growth areas in the county. North Bethany and Bonnie Slope West are in the northern part of the county, urban unincorporated. We've got Hillsborough, South Hillsborough, South Cooper Mountain and Beaverton, and River Terrace and Tiger. So it's a partnership between the county. We're putting up about 2/3 of the total project funding. The cities over time will be reimbursing us for about 1/3 of those project costs, much of which will be paid by the development community through system development charges and the transportation development tax. So that program is $140 million for 20 projects and over about a 10 to 11 year life cycle. So we have the first group of projects are in design right now for this program. So we'll start seeing construction in 2018. Yeah. Okay. And unfortunately, this map only shows the first phase of those 20 projects, but it's almost eight or nine, I think, just in the first phase. So that's just the first phase of projects. So, as Steve said, we just thought it was kind of an opportune time, since we've got MSTIP 3E approved, the bonding cost sharing program is getting in motion, to just sort of give you a kind of a quick recap on how we do the transportation funding. So what this means is, when you start looking at all these different programs in their totality over this next 8 to 10 years, we're going to be building 62 road projects. Those are just the ones that are specifically identified. There will be other things happening, TDT funded projects and others. They total about nearly $500 million additional to what we've already invested. And then, as we do these projects, we are coordinating with the Willamette Water Supply Pipeline Project. So if you're familiar with that, they're building a pretty significant pipeline from the Willamette in Wilsonville, and then up through Cooper Mountain and South Hillsboro, and then branching off to Hillsboro and Beaverton. So we're working really closely with them, and we're trying to help leverage, again, opportunities here where we can partner with them to put pipe in the ground at the same time we're doing a road project. The benefits there are we save some money collectively for our taxpayers and our ratepayers, and then we're able to just go in and do one project and disrupt the traffic one time. So we see a lot of benefits and advantages there. And then that's a map that just sort of shows all of those different funding programs. So again, this is about a 10-year look ahead, and again, it doesn't include all of the high growth projects, so there are another 10 or so projects that didn't make it on the map. So it's a lot of work, and maybe that's a good segue to Mr. Stockhoff. He's got to deliver.
So Gary Stockhoff, I'm the county engineer, and I've been to the group before, but it was usually on the development side and the improvements that go along with that. But the other hat I wear is to deliver the capital projects that you're seeing here. And MSTIP is a wonderful program. I mean, it is something that we're the envy of the state and a lot of other agencies up and down the coast. So it's helped us out. It's made possible a lot of things that we're doing. And over the last few years, we've really gone into a lot of partnering and public and private with getting jobs done. So two of the projects, just real quick, that we'll mention would be Corn Pass and Brookwood, which are both being widened to 7 lanes. Those were done in conjunction with conditions issued by the city of Hillsboro. So there's a public agency we partnered with, and Intel. And we came together and cobbled all these funds together in timing and have put those jobs out. Now the good news is they're being prepped for final pavement. But back to the question of whether we get it done, we're not sure, because we have to have dry weather. So some of the stuff is happening. We hope to have it done in the next couple of weeks, but again, it's very much weather dependent. There's several other projects that we've teamed up with around the county. Farmington Road down in Beaverton is one that we worked with Beaverton real close on. That one's moving its way along. We hope to have not final lift paving, but substantial completion by hopefully Thanksgiving. A lot of the final lift paving, when we get to this time of the year, actually happens next spring when we have better weather again. Stephen mentioned the water project. That went in along with us down at 124th in the South County. If you're not familiar with that project, it's from Tonkin Road over to 12th and Sherwood. That project was about a $35 million project, one of the biggest, actually the biggest we've ever led. Just to put things in perspective, Andy mentioned that things have kind of started slowing down on his side of things. That's not the case for my group. In calendar year 2015, if you remember back to Stephen's comment that over the life of MSTIP, we've done about $1 billion. We did $100 million worth of work in 2015. That was by far out there. We just added this next $140 million with the high growth stuff. So it has been a challenge, especially with the staffing level that is still back like we were delivering $35 million a year. So it's created challenges, but it's also created great opportunity in using those partnership agreements to help us move along. One of the other big partnership agreements that we're having right now, as you know, Nike is expanding, and virtually every road around it will be touched in one way or another. We're trying to get 158th out the door. That would go to 5 lanes. We are trying to, next up would be Jenkins Road. That would be 5 lanes between Murray and 158th. Following that will be Walker Road, going to 5 lanes, somewhere to somewhere. And then the intersection of Murray and Walker will have actually 2 new bridges or widened bridges to accommodate 5 lanes going on through on Walker, and we can hardly keep up with the things that are happening. So it's great news. Again, a lot of it can't happen because it does affect all of you. Just one real quick thing as I wrap up here. The high growth projects really are about the developments. Right now, the ones that we're really focusing on are widening Roy Rogers Road. There's a mouthful. From Shoals south down to past Bull Mountain and trying to, at least on the east side, get down to Beef Bend. That's a high growth project being funded with the bonded money. 175th from Shoals north up past the new high school, up kind of to where it straightens out, would be 5 lanes. And then for any of you that navigate the Kimmer 175th route, that will have a roundabout put in at the top that will hopefully alleviate some of that, other than when we have to shut the road down to put the roundabout in. But that's a small sacrifice for the bigger good. So in Hillsborough, we have the widening of Corn Pass from TV Highway north up to Lois. That will then basically make Corn Pass at least 5 lanes down through South Hillsborough as Hillsborough moves that project along all the way to the freeway. And of course, as we get up to Cornell, it'll go to 7 lanes. So a lot of great things. I could probably ramble on for quite a while, but we are behind, and so I'll wrap things up and kick it over to Steve.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions on this topic for Steve or Gary?